Why should you go to jail for a crime someone else noticed?
Hi everyone, welcome to Priority Holder, and today we're playing Mono White Prison in the Timeless format. So our lock pieces of the day are Chalice of the Void, which you often put on x equals 0 or x equals 1 to stop all the lean decks in the format, and also High Noon, which forces everyone to cast only one spell each turn. And so the way we break the symmetry on these is not playing ones for Chalice, and by playing a lot of instant speed stuff for High Noon. So something that plays particularly well with High Noon is Aven Interrupter, which basically makes them waste their one spell by making them plot it. Reprieve does a similar thing. And an interesting piece of tech in this deck is Essence Reliquary. All it does is tap to return one of our things to its owner's hand once per turn. Which you may be wondering, like, why would you even want that? Like, it seems pretty lame. What you do is once you have a High Noon out, you can basically soft lock people with the Aven Interrupter, or you can turbo fog people with the One Ring, or you can have infinite Solitude. So it's like a very late game strategy, but let's try and lock some people up. Alright, so this hand is not amazing, like, it's fine. I kept out the strength of having a Wrath of God in hand against a Lurrus deck. That was like the main factor right there. So, really hoping to make good use of that. The opponent's fetched into a red-black source. Going to definitely play out the Chrome Mox here. One, because they might have hand disruption. Two, because we want to hold up Reprieve. So, gonna tuck the Witch Enchanter and just play a Plains. I'd prefer to get the Surveil land off the Arid Mesa if we can, and we're almost definitely reprieving something this turn. So, alright, so the opponent's going to crack their fetch and get a red-white land. Now, I normally don't love reprieving an Ocelot Pride, but the opponent is out of white sources, so I'm very happily going to reprieve this. Like, yes, we do have the Wrath of God, but I want to just, like, delay them and make them sort of waste their mana. But they do have a Ragavan follow-up, which is pretty tough for us. However, we did draw a High Noon, and I'd prefer to use the Aven Interrupter after we've used the Wrath of God. So it seems like playing a High Noon just to, like, really mess with them will be useful. So they're not a combo deck, they're not trying to play a ton of spells, but they're a lean deck, they're a Lurrus deck, all 1s and 2s. And so now they can't double or triple spell because of High Noon. And so they're just gonna have a hard time deploying stuff. So, like, sure, they could play our Aven right here, but then they can't play Ocelot Pride, for example, you know. So we're hoping to just strand cards in their hand just from the power of High Noon. Now, Juggernaut Peddler is really unfortunate. I was like, the whole hand was kept on the strength of Wrath of God, and now they're gonna take it. So we don't have a way to clean up on aisle 5. So that's really annoying, and there's only one other copy of Wrath in there. We have some rings and Solitudes, you know, we have some other defensive stuff, but we're gonna have to figure out a new plan now that Wrath is gone. I'm gonna crack the Surveil, get a Surveil land, and see what we have on top, and it's a Chrome Mox, so don't love that. Now the thing is, High Noon's already doing work. Like, they can't play Juggernaut Peddler and then, like, God of Souls and Ocelot Pride, for example. They're all stranded, so they're really slowed down. So I'm just going to play a Juggernaut. It's the most mana efficient thing, and it does block their creatures. Like, let's say they want to static prison it on their turn, well then they can't play any more creatures, you know. So I'm going to just play the Juggernaut and see where we go from there. And we see the Ocelot Pride in the opponent's hand. I'll go ahead and link a very different kind of Ocelot Pride deck. Don't love seeing a Johnny right here, especially because Juggernaut has a forced attack. And so if they just chump with their cat token, then they get an Ajani flip. They have the red permanent out. We're in pretty bad shape. We can technically crack the High Noon, but then that unleashes all the rest of their hand, you know? So the opponent makes a small mistake right here. They should have just chumped with the cat token. They go for the kill on the Juggernaut, but what I'm going to do is assign all the damage onto Juggernaut Peddler to not induce the Ajani flip. And so now the Ajani has not flipped. Sure, our Juggernaut's dead, but we'll happily, like, take that over a flipped Ajani. So the opponent's going to try and take matters in their own hands, but this is where the High Noon sort of soft lock stuff comes into place. We're going to Aven Interrupter their Goblin Bombardment, and that's their one spell for the turn. Like, they went all in on that. They don't get to flip their Johnny. We'll happily trade off with the Ragavan here. Don't want them getting more stuff, you know. So currently have 5 mana. The fetch land puts us up to 6, which means we're actually, like, within striking range of Emeria's Call. So I'm, like, going to try and hopefully hard cast that sometime. So they're going to try and Goblin Bombardment again. We're going to Reprieve it again and get a Solitude, which is pretty nice. All right, so the opponent's going to put Lurrus in the hand. And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it so the opponent, like, either can't cast their stuff because of Chalice or can't deploy it because of High Noon. So here's an energy deck that has 7 cards in hand. They literally can't play their spells because we just keep denying them. And there's a Reprieve right there. So we don't have enough mana to, well, unless we bolt in the Emeria's Call to Reprieve and Solitude. But like I said, I really want to hold into the Emeria's Call because we might actually be casting that this game. So the point's going to Gun Bombardment, and we're just going to let this resolve at this point because we have Solitude to try and interfere. So you could Solitude in response, or we could wait till we start sacrificing stuff and see what happens. I don't know why Perforos appears for Gun Bombardment. I just realized that right now. Like, what? Why the heck is Perforos appearing? So, all right. So then there's a Raucous Theater. They're going to Surveil. So they played their 1 spell for the turn. They're going to Gun Bombardment, attempt to do the Johnny Flip. They could have attacked him for some damage, like that's, you know. But they're going to attempt the Johnny Flip, which is perfect for us. We're going to flash in the Solitude in response, and they're just going to throw a Johnny at us because they don't care about the 1 life from it, so they'd rather deal the 1 damage. Alright. And we just keep ripping Reprieves and Aven Interrupters, and that's what this deck's designed to do, you know. So, like, they're locked down to 1 spell per turn, and we're just going to just keep denying them from stuff. So they have a spare Johnny, which I'm sure they'd love to flip. We're going to just make them keep wasting their time. So, and I've played decks before that have really gotten beaten up by energy. Like I played Merfolk recently that just got slapped around by energy. So it's nice to put the pain on the energy decks sometimes when, you know, not every deck is good against energy. So I'm counting mana right here. We don't have enough for Emeria's Call plus Reprieve. We're 1 short, but I'm going to just play it out there. Crash in, but we're in incredible shape. Now, one thing to remember with high noon decks is that you can always, you know, toss it at them for 5 damage. So we already know the opponent's dead. They don't know they're dead right here, you know, unless they have, like, you know, pulled a Swords to Plowshares or something like that, or Lightning Bolt. They're in massive trouble. So far, they've only been playing sorcery speed, and so now we can simply crash in, throw the high noon. Yeah, they're super dead. So on to the next game, also against a Lurrus Companion. It seems way too Solitude heavy. Like, sure, we could get rid of stuff, but it's just that massive card disadvantage. So, going to mulligan into a much more functional hand. A little bit awkward at the white sources. I'm going to get rid of Essence Reliquary here. It's one of those cards you want to pull in the late game. That's when all of its shenanigans can really go wild. In the early game, it just doesn't really do enough. And unfortunately can't be tucked under Chrome Mox because it's an artifact. So I'm going to hold off on playing Chrome Mox. Just because I don't really know what card to tuck yet. So we'll see what the opponent plays, and it's Red-White Energy. Ocelot Pride is raring to go. So I'll go ahead and link a very different kind of Red-White deck than Energy here. It's a space I like to play in a lot. So going to play the Ancient Tomb, and now I'm like, alright, well, I'd really love to get the 1 ring out there. So what I'm going to do is tuck the Reprieve. It seems a little small ball for this situation. Like, it seems like Wrath of God and Solitude are going to do some, like, excellent work for us. So I'm going to turbo out a 1 ring and then start drawing. And time is just so awesome. Like, turn 2 1 rings, you know, like, you get to do tons of powerful stuff. It's really fun. And as the opponent surveils, please Master of Arms with like button if you like seeing opponents get locked up. Alright, Guide of Souls. So they're not going to trigger either Guide of Souls or Ocelot Pride this turn, which we're happy about. And so the question is like, how much do we want them to play into the Wrath? You know, like, the thing is, both these cards can snowball and, like, just win games on their own. Pride makes tokens. Guide of Souls picks up counters. They're insanely synergistic together. So it is risky just leaving them in play. But we also have a Wandering Emperor, which could do some serious work. We also have to, like, be very mindful of our life total. We're taking, you know, ring damage. We have Ancient Tomb. So it seems like we'll probably want to play Chrome Mox here to just keep developing our mana in a less painful manner. So I'm going to tuck the High Noon. Like, we saw how awesome it was last game against Energy, right? Like, we could really constrain them. But out of the cards I had in hand, like, you know, now we can hardcast Solitude. We have Wandering Emperor up. I'm hesitant to hardcast Solitude because we still have the lingering Wrath of God. So this is perfect. So they're going to Amped Raptor, hopefully into, like, just some random creature that just gets scooped up by the Wrath. So we'll have to see what they spun into, and it's a Ragavan. So this is perfect. So now it's not ideal that the opponent's going to, like, get some energy. But I'm hoping that they just use all their energy right here, and then we can just strand them with, like, nothing. So there's a moment here, like, you know, whether we want to use a Wandering Emperor. But the thing is, like, I'd rather just take a damage hit and then play out Wandering Emperor end of turn, and just let the Wrath do all the work, you know. So we could take 4 damage. It is a little worrisome with Ancient Tomb and One Ring eating us, but we should be pretty safe once the Wrath goes off. So I'm just going to play out the Wandering Emperor. We are falling to 11 here, soon to fall to 9 off the ring. I'm just going to plus Emperor because we don't want to just Wrath up our Samurai token, you know. So just going to plus the Emperor and pass. Alright, so they're going to get an extra energy, extra life. We take some ring damage. Aven Interrupter is pretty nice. So, going to draw off the ring. Chalice is incredible. So that's going to allow us to like really put the pain on them. Because once we Wrath, we can drop a Chalice for 1. And then like they're like in huge trouble. Not to mention the opponent's a little mana screwed. Like you wouldn't be able to tell from how many creatures they have in play. But going to Wrath of God here, falling to 7 life. And so you have, life total management is a serious thing in this deck. Because we have so many self-damaging cards, so you have to be really careful. So going to play a Chalice for 1 and then create a Samurai token. Feeling pretty dang good though, because sure the ring is going to smack us, but then we have a replacement ring already locked and loaded, so just got to get that into play. Now I was not expecting this, but this is like the perfect card for them in this situation. Really bad for us. It's a Roiling Vortex. I already mentioned how our life total is just like under assault, so we take some ring damage, the Vortex hits us. Thankfully for us, you know, we have a couple ways to get. We could Solitude one of our own creatures, you know, to gain some life. But we just ripped a Get Lost, which I put it in there to deal with Planeswalkers, because sometimes Planeswalker, like if they flip in a Johnny and we don't have ways to attack into it, like that's really bad for us. So I have 2 Get Lost in there to deal with Planeswalkers, but they can also kill other stuff. Did some mana counting and stuff like that, and eventually realized it's better to play the One Ring and then use the pain mana off Ancient Tomb under ring protection. That's how we unlock the most mana for this turn. So eventually got there, just trying to figure things out. So going to reset the ring, probably not going to draw off it, and was just going to pop it with Get Lost. The thing is, we can get a little, you know, a little more value by letting it damage them, you know. So we'll see if that ends up mattering, but going to crash in with our Unsummoning Stick Samurai right here, and just you know, could set a, yeah, I'm gonna set a stop right here. Actually, no, I just go ahead and let them go through it because I'm not really concerned about the Vortex. Now we definitely want the Vortex off the battlefield because that's going to be able to prevent us from gaining life, you know. So they have an Unstable Amulet. We must be locking out a lot of 1s right now. Like it doesn't seem like the kind of card they'd love to play right now. They'd probably rather play like an Ajani or something like that. So we're going to Get Lost the Vortex. They're going to get a couple map tokens. And that's one thing with ring decks and Ancient Tomb decks. You have to, you know, leverage that ring protection to use your Ancient Tombs. You know, I forget that sometimes, but that's something you have to be conscious of. Alright, so what do we do now? I purposely did not draw off the ring because I didn't want to take any damage at this exceptionally low life total. So I decide like to really lay the hammer down. So this is a Lurrus deck. Outside of Lurrus, they just have 1s and 2s. They might have some 0s, you know, Mishra's Bauble or something like that. But going to just lay the hammer down with an X equals 2 Chalice to essentially lock out all their spells. So now they can't even really, like, they'll get 1 go off the Amulet, but after that they won't be, because the Amulet can deal some chip damage. So that's what I'm a little worried about. But now we're finally amassing some Samurais. Land sequencing is important because we have 2 tap lands, but we also have some like MDFC bolt into play lands, so like want to get as much mana sources into play without hurting ourselves. Witch Enchanter, I keep it on top. Honestly, like we already have 1 in hand, which we can play out to pop the Amulet if we need to. So, but we have plenty of pitch cards for Solitude, not drawing off the ring, and going to have to see where this goes. I actually don't love keeping the Witch Enchanter on top. I'm not really sure why I did that. I don't know if I wanted... Anyway, the opponent has seen enough at the point. We had them thoroughly locked out. So on to the next game. This is a Jegantha Companion, and wouldn't you know it, it's another energy deck. So that's how it goes sometimes. But as you can see, we are not scared of energy decks. We welcome these matchups. So we're going second, but we have a turn 1 Chalice for 1, and we have the Wrath of God plus 1 ring. So they got their one drop of the game so far. So Now the thing is, this is a Jegantha deck. It's not a Lurrus deck, so they might have some other things in there that are freed from Lurrus constraints, you know. So now this still is like a pretty killer start from the opponent. You know, Guide of Souls into a Johnny is just like a classic game-winning kind of play, you know. So it's also what you don't love to see after chalicing for one. You want to see the opponent just squirming and not playing anything instead of finding powerful 2-drops, you know. So, all right, now the thing is, we can already vault ourselves up to 4 mana, and so the first question is, what do you tuck under the Chrome Mox? And these are all exceptional cards: Wandering Emperor, Solitude, and Wrath of God. What I decide is that I'm going to tuck the Solitude. It's the most redundant card. Like, we can find more of them, and what we're going to do is try and let the opponent play into the Wrath a bit more. So we're going to ring protect ourselves. Hopefully they play a couple more creatures, and then we can just sweep them up with Wrath, and the Wandering Emperor can also do some cleanup. Now, Gom Bombardment is a problem because they can flip the Ajani, and once again, that's exactly why Get Lost is in this deck, is to deal with Planeswalkers. So sure, they have the Ajani, but we're fortunate here. We found the Get Lost. But they had to sacrifice some significant board presence to make that happen. Not to mention their mana situation's not great. They're leaning on that energy fueled land, you know. So going to tap the One Ring. Life total is always a question with this deck, so you have to be careful with that. Really trying to figure out what to play without losing too much life. Like, we have the Ancient Tomb. If we wanted to on their turn, we could reprieve something and then also Get Lost something with the Ancient Tomb mana, you know, because we have up to 4 mana. But I was thinking about it, I'm like, you know, we just cannot let Ajani activate. And I was thinking we could sort of have it all, but the thing is, I decided, all right, I'm just going to go shields down. I'm not going to hold up Reprieve. I don't want to take any more damage than I have to, so I'm just going to take down Ajani on their untap. And the opponent decides just to crack some map tokens, so like they are sort of mana screwed. However, they are going to keep the spare Ajani on top. You know, it seems, from their perspective, it's very strong, because if they're seeing the Gom Bombardment, they're like, all right, if we can flip that, like, we can just close them out. And we have Chalice for one, you know. What they don't know is that we got them covered, as we see the Reprieves and the High Noons coming. So, honestly, High Noon might not even be necessary right now, since they're, like, mana screwed. So, it just depends. Now, our life total is a little bit suspect right now. So what I'm going to do is just pop the Gom Bombardment right here. I don't know, maybe it's better to just... well, I guess it makes it more safe if to let Ajani resolve. Going to play Eiganjo, and then decide to just Wandering Emperor down the Guide of Souls right now. So I'm going to let them have the Ajani. You know, shields down for Reprieve right now, but Guide of Souls is dealing a ton of damage to us. And Ancient Tombing out Wandering Emperor, then -2ing it is life neutral, you know? So we knew they're drawing an Ajani and no more lands. But now we have Wandering Emperor in play. We could Wrath right now. So going to draw off the One Ring. And we draw an extra Wrath of God. So this is a really hard decision. We have like a million options. Sometimes that's the hardest, is when you have the most options. Like, all right, what should I do? There's like a million different things we could do. And also juggling the life loss of Ancient Tomb. But would have loved a Chrome Mox in the mix somewhere, just to help get us some more less painful mana. But the thing is, the One Ring is going to eat us alive as it currently stands. So I'm going to play out the Essence Reliquary. And this is some of the tricks you can do with the Essence Reliquary. It's also why I'm playing so many MDFCs. Part of it is to fuel the Chrome Moxes. Part of it is that we can pick them up in land form with the Essence Reliquary, and then use their spell form in the late game, you know. So going to just play a land, and we're pretty dang safe right here with double Solitude and like plenty of pitch cards. So I'm not playing anything out right here. I guess I could have just tossed out a High Noon, but like I said, the opponent's mana screwed. Like, it's not super important to so I end up getting rid of the High Noons right here. All right, so there's an Amped Raptor. Going to just Reprieve it. I guess this is exactly why I didn't play the High Noons, because I wanted to keep up Reprieve just to keep the board clear. So if they spin into a Gom Bombardment, you know, like, then we're in massive trouble, you know. Or I guess we have Solitudes, but anyway, just wanted to just keep the opponent's development sort of stifled. Alright, so they're going to send 2 damage at the Wandering Emperor, which is exactly sort of what we thought would happen. Going to pitch cast a Solitude. Could pitch the Emeria's Call or the High Noon. We're like reasonably close to casting Emeria's Call. So we're just going to preserve the Wandering Emperor. There is an argument for like dealing with the Johnny once and for all, but we can take 1 point of damage right here because we took out our active One Ring, you know. Now here's the other cool thing that Essence Reliquary can do, is that we can turbo fog people. You know, we play the One Ring, get the ring protection, return the ring back to our hand. You know, so we have that. We can also soft lock people by, you know, playing High Noon and then endlessly returning Aven Interrupters to our hand with Essence Reliquary. You know, so that's like another thing you can do. It was at this point where I lost connection, managed to reset the game, get back into it. You can see the whole battlefield's changed. This is the same game. Opponent tried to sneak an Amped Raptor in there, but we managed to have enough timeouts banked that we were going to get back into the game. We're firmly in the driver's seat. We just had to make sure we didn't get disconnected. So that's part of the fun on playing at Arena. So going to crash in. At this point in time, just going to alternate between plus oneing and minus oneing Wandering Emperor to increase our board presence and just keep the knights coming. So going to play a ring, activate the ring, and just return it with Essence Reliquary. Don't want to take any more damage at this point. And so here's the turbo fogging coming into play. So going to just play out our lands, and I feel like pretty like dang safe right here. Like we have a Solitude, we have Reprieve, we're under ring protection, so we can actually reprieve something right here with our Ancient Tomb mana. So the opponent has some like significant direct damage with Flage, but given enough mana, we can just turbo fog them the rest of the game, you know. So we're going to reprieve them, and I can't imagine this is a very fun experience for these energy players, casting the same spells over and over and over again. But man, is it awesome to be on the other side of. So, and like I said, the energy decks could stand some punishment. You know, they're very strong. They beat up a lot of decks. It's nice to make them feel the pain sometimes. So doing the turbo fog thing again. Another way we could do this is with the High Noon Aven Interrupter soft lock, you know. But that like sort of keeps removing the board presence, and I'm just trying to kill them. And alright, so I'm going to let the Flage happen, and I'm just going to pitch cast Solitude just to deny them the life gain. They don't have like enough cards in the graveyard. They haven't played like enough spells from their hand. You can see their hand is still like completely full. So I'm going to pitch cast Solitude. It's going to buffer our own life. It takes some power off the board, but it denies them the life gain. That's the major point. So they're at 10. And remember, High Newts can be chucked for 5 damage each. So the opponent's like actually like almost, yeah. So they're gonna quit, but we had them basically killed right there. So on to the next game. Some very fun and satisfying games so far. All right, so the opponent has a turn 0 Leyline of Anticipation, and I'll say that is not something I was anticipating. So we'll have to see what this means. This is not a card that's commonly played in Timeless. So there's a black MDFC. I see Monumental Henge. I like the value of Monumental Henge in this deck, like fishing up One Rings, Chalices, Chrome Moxes, you know, that kind of stuff. But we are pretty low on planes because of our MDFC, so it won't always ETB untapped. So you just have to be aware of that. Alright, so the opponent misses a land drop, and I chaliced for one. Like I said, I have no idea what the opponent's doing. So, but I figure against a black deck, it's usually pretty good. But usually black decks aren't playing Zurin Orbs and stuff. So now I'm like, oh shoot, well if only I cast it on 0, would have been apparently lights out for this opponent. So they're going to play Zurin Orb and Chrome Mox. Now they're going to put Born Upon the Wind under the Chrome Mox, and they flash out a Mox Opal. So what this is telling me, the fact that they have Leyline Anticipation and Born Upon a Wind means that they heavily prioritize being able to play at instant speed. So I'm like, okay, well that means it's worth it to pop the Leyline, especially because there's not going to be any other valid targets for it, as we can plainly see. As at this point in time, like, wait a second, they might be a paradoxical outcome deck, which means High Noon is like a death sentence for them. So that turned out to be enough. It's not 100% certain that's what they were, but it seems like they were something like that. So, all right, tap land and go. Okay, artifact land from the opponent and Retrofitter Foundry. If only we had an Ancient Tomb, we could have turned one Chalice for one and like been feeling way better. But Retrofitter is actually pretty problematic for us. So I am going to Chalice for one here, even though against a lot of Affinity decks, you want to actually Chalice for 0 and lock out Mox Opals and Mishra's Baubles and stuff like that. So here come the parade of 0 cards. Now this is an interesting artifact deck. This is not your run-of-the-mill Pinnacle Emissary stuff. We see Broadside Bombardiers, and also they must have a density of non-artifact cards to tuck under Chrome Mox to be able to even justify it. So they seem to be more of like red-black, like mid-range artifacts. So very interesting take on it so far. Now the question is, do we hold up like Razorgrass Ambush to try and get the Broadside Bombardiers? I guess I should have just waited till they attacked with it again. I was just afraid of getting, let's say like they get like a big cost reduced artifact into play and they toss it with Broadside Bombardiers for like 11 damage or something like that, you know. So instead I'm doing a different trick where I play out Essence Reliquary, pitch cast Solitude, then return the Solitude to hand. So essentially makes pitch casting Solitude cost just 1 card because you keep the Solitude, you know. I guess if you don't count the Essence Reliquary, but that's going to hopefully keep doing work for us. Now this is a problem though, because they have plenty of mana just camp out on Retrofitter Foundry, which is basically the exact type of card that can beat us. So I put a couple Get Lost in the deck, but the thing is those specifically do not hit artifacts. So that is a vulnerability. Like sure, if we Chalice X = 1, like we can avoid stuff like this, but that is a vulnerability I'm realizing in this run right here that might need to be shored up. Like maybe we need some like, I guess prismatic ending is not quite working because we're monocolored, you know, mostly monocolored. But we might need some more like universal removal to deal with like problematic artifacts. So it depends on how many people start rocking that kind of stuff. But if you play best of 3, you might see some like retrofitters and artifact sideboards and stuff like that. So gotta be prepared. I guess that is something that Karn the Great Creator takes care of. So my mouse was having problems this game. It's why you're seeing me like accidentally zoom in on stuff a lot of times. So we could, the thing is, Retrofitter makes it so tough for our Solitudes because they can always sack a response and upgrade, you know, keep upgrading stuff. Now, the end of the chain is the 4/4 Golem, so I am going to just Solitude that. And the opponent has some spare Retrofitter mana, so I'm going to take care of the 4/4. And if I didn't have another Solitude, there'd be a strong argument to using Reliquary to return Solitude to hand, so basically like infinite removal. But with another Solitude in hand, like it seems worth it to just let it happen. The problem is like the thing is the opponent has 1,000,000 mana and a Retrofitter, so they can just keep making stuff, and eventually we can Turbo Fog them. But then we're probably going to deck out first. Anyway, the opponent ended up timing out, but I just wanted to show that game as an illustration as to what could beat this deck. Retrofitter Foundry is like the exact kind of card. Like, if we Turbo Fog the opponent, we'll probably mill out first because we tend to draw more cards. So it's just an interesting development right there. Alright, so turn 1 Dark Ritual from the opponent. They're going to play Shadowheart and a Deathrite Shaman. And Shadowheart deals 1 damage on end step to each player, and it cannot use its specialized ability, which lets it sort of it's like a 6-sided card. It lets it upgrade to various things. It cannot use that unless someone's, I think, at like 14 life or something like that. So we already know Chalice X = 1 is strong against this opponent. We've seen Dark Ritual and Deathrite Shaman, so we're gonna Chalice X = 1 and see where we go from there. The Chrome Mox is basically dead in our hand with 2 lands and a card we don't want to pitch. So, but we also see a Nykthos over there, so they must be some sort of black devotion strat. Maybe they're running Necros and Grey Merchants and stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and link a black-green deck of my own that's pretty dissimilar to this, but it's very interesting. All right, so it would be really nice just to camp out on the Aven Interrupter, but I can see they're on the cusp of flipping or specializing the Shadowheart, and I just don't even want to deal with that. So I'm holding up Eiganjo here. The opponent attempts to slip a Dark Ritual through our Chalice, but does not work. We're going to crack the fetch right here. I wanted to make sure he did this before they hit like the requisite life total. So going to just channel Eiganjo and take down the, like once again, my mouse was freaking out. So actually my trackpad was messing up. So we're going to take 1 damage off the Deathrite. But we are really stifling their development. They're not drawing any lands, but we already know they tried the Dark Ritual something out after Chalice. So like that is at least messing with them a little bit. All right. Now there was an argument to just Wandering Emperor on our turn. It's just main phase it to take out Deathrite Shaman, but decided to try and snipe it and also hold up Aven Interrupter in case they tried to play something nasty. But this is pretty safe anyway because you can flash out Wandering Emperor and play the get a Samurai token. So that gets us a second Samurai. And now we can start crashing and putting pressure on the opponent, and we're feeling like pretty safe right now. And this is a pretty mana hungry deck. We'd love to hardcast Solitudes and like play One Rings and stuff like that. So I am going to play the Chrome Mox. Alright, so the opponent is going to use Deathrite Shaman's life loss ability. So like the thing is, that is a relatively quick clock. The thing is, our Samurais are going to start beating down, and like they're going to outrace the Deathrite, but it's just something to be mindful of, that the Deathrite can attack our life total. Alright, so it's using its mana generation ability. Love to see that, because that means it's going to be like a really juicy thing to Aven Interrupter. So they're going to put a Liliana the Veil on the stack. We're going to plot it for them, and we managed to rip a Reprieve right there, which is like really awesome. So trackpad having problems once again, but eventually figure out how to put a 1/1 counter on one of our creatures. We're gonna crash in for 7 damage, and like this game's like almost completely in the bag right here. We have Chalice X=1 and we have Reprieve, so they're gonna retry the Liliana. We're going to Reprieve the Liliana, see what we draw, and the opponent is like nearly dead right now. They're gonna have to chump with the Deathrite. So they're going to activate Deathrite, put a Thoughtseize on the stack, gets countered by Chalice, and that's enough for them. So Chalice is just super strong against these black decks. Now, if you haven't been keeping track, outside of that one artifact game that just ended prematurely, the opponent timed out, like, we're undefeated right now. And when I get on these win streaks with these videos, which doesn't always happen, but when it happens, I play until I lose a game. And so that's where we're at right now. I'm playing until I lose a game because it's important to see how the deck loses games also. So that's where we're going. So we'll see if this person has what it takes to take us down. So they're fetching into Forest, and they're playing Noble Hierarch. Not super common in Timeless, but love to see it. Alright, so we're holding up Aven Interrupter. Really want to get to mana 4 for both Wrath of God and One Ring. Alright, so the opponent cracks for another Forest. And they're going to pass to attackers and crash in. And so, seeing this, I was like, alright, I think I'm going to flash an Interrupter to block the Hierarch because, I am gambling they aren't casting anything else, but it just seems like too excellent to just eat a Hierarch for free. So we did get to gobble up the Hierarch, and we weren't punished by not having Interrupter up for a spell afterwards. So that worked out just perfectly. Now I'm going to toss out a One Ring. So we've stifled their mana development. Still don't exactly know what's going on over there, but feeling exceptionally safe against a green deck, holding Wrath of God in hand. Reliquary is interesting. We could start the turbo fogging. Alright, so the opponent end steps Worldly Tutors a Badgermole Cub onto the top of the deck. So now it makes sense. They're like some sort of ramping strategy. They're going to play the Badgermole Cub. And as they earthbend their land, let me know in the comments, what are your favorite mono white cards? Is there something that just really speaks to you? Could it be Swords to Plowshares, Wrath of God? Anyway, let me know in the comments. So we're drawing off the One Ring. We're like, it feels like we're pretty firmly in the driver's seat at this point. I'm going to play a tap land and crash in. There was an argument to holding back for defense, but the thing is, like, we're actually clocking them pretty well and like really feeling safe with the High Noon and Reprieve right now. So they're going to put an Ouroborid on the stack, and we're going to just Reprieve it. So they must be inspired, or at least building it similar to the standard deck that has Badgermole Cubs and Ouroboros and stuff like that. They're just adding like Timeless Power Level and like Worldly Tutors and stuff like that. So very interesting build from the opponent. In fact, I'll go ahead and link a It's actually a Badgermole Cub and a Noble Hierarch deck of my own that's actually very different. It's trying to cheat Eldrazi into play. So, but we have like a million cards in hand. We have the option to start turbo fogging them. We're holding up a Wrath of God still. We're endlessly juggling this Ouroboros, just creating Groundhog's Day situations for opponents all over the place. So, you just gotta love High Noon. Like, it's just good, clean fun. All right, so they do not attack in with the Badgermole Cub. Going to crack this for our Surveil land. And one thing about this deck is that you only ever need the red mana if you have 5 and you want to crack a High Noon. So like there's absolutely no rush in getting a red source into play. Now you find them at your leisure. It's usually in the late game when you want to crack a High Noon. So don't need to like pay a ton of life basically to go crazy on the red sources. Struggling right now to find a Chrome Mox. I want to reset the ring because it's a little dangerous. Like we could do the Reliquary Tower Trip, but this is just a little more mana efficient. And I'm not really too scared of our life total at the moment, especially because of High Noon. Like, you know, the opponent is really constrained. Still not finding any Chrome Moxes. Would love to have had at least one of them to just play out some more mana sources. So we do have to play our lands tapped quite a lot just to save on life, you know, with all these MDFCs. So it's just a vulnerability of this deck that you have to be aware of. All right, end step Worldly Tutor. So the opponent's at least playing on both players' turns, getting some value right there. They get another Badgermole Cub. The thing is, under High Noon, they can't go Badgermole into Ouroboros, put a counter, you know, because you know they only get one spell on their turn. Not to mention, we've got them covered with both Solitude, pitch casting, and Reprieve. So they're going to Badgermole Cub. I'm just going to bounce it, and we draw a Chalice of the Void. So that means what we can do is just Chalice X equals 2 and lock out any future Badgermoles. But the thing is, the opponent's actually already dead. Like I mentioned before, you have to pay attention to when they get into danger mode with High Noon, because now we just toss the High Noon at their face for lethal damage, and they're dead. So the battle continues on to the next game. All right, this hand is honestly pretty awesome. We have a turn 1 Reprieve, not quite as strong in most scenarios as a turn 1 Chalice, X equals 1. Just thinking about what to tuck, and it's decide to tuck the Razorgrass Ambush just in case this is like a show and tell deck. We'd love to have a Witch Enchanter in hand. But if it's like an energy deck, then we wish we had the other card. So black MDFC getting bolted in, and a Grief being pitch cast. Most concerning about that pitch cast is that they used a Progenitus to pitch cast it. So we know it's a Spy Belcher deck. Now this sucks. Like I am going to just Reprieve right here, because maybe they have like a low density of, you know, but the thing is they have like all MDFCs, so they have like infinite cards to pitch. So they're going to pitch a Prized Amalgam and recast the Grief. Hopefully we manage to slow them down, but they have a Dark Ritual follow-up. And so this is how you can lose games right here. So they're going to double Dark Ritual and then hard cast a Balustrade Spy in their turn 1. So it happens. But the interesting thing is, like, had we turn 1 Chalice for 1 in this matchup, that's essentially an instant win. Like, we have plenty of ways to stop them from trying out their other shenanigans. So they're going to get a million creatures into play. We can technically, you know, survive depending on how many reshufflers if we can get a 1 ring into play, but we're just too many draws away from that. Well, that was super fun. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Those are some excellent soul-crushing wins against the energy decks, and this is just a fun strategy. It's not invincible. Like, you could see scenarios going down where we saw how we lost that last game against Spy Belcher, and like there's things that can take it down, but it's a fun and very interesting strategy. You'll notice I'm only playing 2 Ancient Tombs. Like, I am not certain that's correct, but in early iterations of this deck, I was running all 4, and just, you realize, like, there's actually not that many things that you can actually cast off Ancient Tomb. Like, you have the Dream of turn 1 Chalice, but, like, the Ancient Tomb mana is sort of wasted on almost all of these. This is a late game play anyway. Like, I guess you could turbo out 1 rings or some of these, but anyway, the damage mounted way too much for all the MDFCs, and so I cut down to 2 Ancient Tombs, and it just felt a lot more natural right there, but that could entirely be wrong. Some other stuff I was looking at, there's Banishing Slash as another way to, like, hit artifacts and stuff, but it is a sorcery, which is, like, a real pain in a High Noon deck, you know? Battle menu is sort of an interesting option. There's a lot of different things it can do, but the question is, are all of them good enough for the time of metagame? I'm not certain about that. Exercise, another one that could be strong, but it gets dinged for being sorcery speed in a high noon deck. As far as Wrath options, I also thought strongly about Split Up since you can cast it way earlier, but the thing is, you just don't want anything left on the battlefield, and so this does leave some things behind sometimes, and I guess you can have scenarios where like your stuff doesn't die and their stuff does, but it's just one to pay attention to. And then I'm always paying attention to stuff like Aven Interrupter and Spell Queller, and another one in that lineage is Aang Swift Savior, which sort of does the like Aven Interrupter kind of thing, but also has like an incredible bit that you can transform it and create like this really strong creature. Anyway, this is one I've been very excited about. I might try it in like a different style of sort of high noon, like blue-white deck, but it's one I've been thinking about. So, but yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to see even more nonsense, please consider subscribing. And if you're already subscribed, thank you for your support. Your engagement with the channel helps me know what the people want. Thank you.